Hello everyone, my name is Parsis Kandulna and I am a MSc Botany graduate. Today in this video we are going to talk about sexual reproduction in plants. So this is the topic. It's a very simple topic. I'm going to teach in a very simple manner, and I hope that this video would help you to understand the process of reproduction in plants. So let us start with the video. Sexual reproduction in flowering plants, which is also known as angiosperm. So here basically we have to understand what exactly happens in the process of reproduction sexually. And when we say flowering plants, it is referred to as angiosperms because there are definite terms given to plants which bear flowers. So those are known as angiosperms. And here, first point, it says a flower is the reproductive unit in plants. So reproduction that basically occurs in a flower, and it is known as the reproductive unit in plants. The second point says that it has 4 successive holes, namely calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium. So there are 4 successive holes where calyx, corolla, androecium, and gynoecium, these are the constituents of a flower. It can be made understood by the following image, which I'm going to display now. So this is an image. Here you can see it's a complete flower having 4 whorls. So here you can see the one which is the colory part, which is the showy part of a flower. This is known as petal. So here it is marked over here. The colory part of a flower is known as the corolla. Okay, it is known as corolla, and the individual members are known as petal. Since here the arrow is showing towards one particular petal, so it is given as petal. And if we consider the whole world, okay, if we consider the whole world, then individual members are known as petal, and together this particular whorl is known as corolla. So in a successive whorls, these things are placed in a flower. This particular thing that you are being able to see, this green color type of stalk like thing, it is known as the receptacle. It is known as the receptacle or thalamus, upon which the whole thing is born. Okay, this receptacle, upon this receptacle or thalamus, the different parts of flowers are born. First whorl, that is the calyx. This is the calyx, the green portion in a flower. When you observe the green portion, the lowermost structure which is present, that is known as the calyx. Okay, individual members are known as sepal. If we consider only one member from it, it is known as sepal. The showy portion is known as corolla, which I have already told you. Next, it will have male and female reproductive structures. So the male reproductive structure is known as the androecium, and the female reproductive structure is known as the gynoecium. So over here, the structures that you can see, this one, there are 6 androecium. Okay, the upper bilobe structure is known as the anther, and this lower slender structure is known as the filament. They together constitute the androecium, which is also known as stamen. In case of the gynoecium or the female reproductive part, this is the female reproductive part, this one. It is also divided into 3 different structures. First, this structure is known as the stigma. The slender structure is known as the style, and this particular swollen structure is known as the ovary. So together, stigma, style, and ovary, these things constitute the gynoecium, or it is also known as pistil. It is known as pistil. It is also termed as carpel, and it is also known as gynoecium. Okay, these are the names that are given to the female reproductive part. And the stamen is also known as androecium. It is commonly known as androecium. Okay, so these are the members present in a complete flower, and exactly what happens in reproduction, we are just going to discuss that. So here in the androecium or in the stamen, this portion which is known as the anther, here there is the production of pollen grain. Okay, here there is the production of pollen grain, which is the product of this anther, and from that pollen grain there will be the production of male gametes. Okay, it is about sexual reproduction, is about fusion of gametes, and the male gamete and female gamete, they fuse together. Okay, that process is known as fertilization, and after that there is the formation of embryo. So from this anther, there will be the production of pollen grain, which will further produce male gametes. And in this particular swollen structure, which is the ovary, here there is an egg present, which is the female gamete. So male gamete is produced here inside this anther. The product is known as pollen grain, which will further produce male gamete. In this particular swollen structure of gynoecium, which is known as the ovary, here there will be one egg. So our main part now, the main center of focus here is now the gynoecium, because the male gamete has to reach the female gamete. So now we are just going to see what kind of processes are occurring so that fertilization takes place actually. Okay, so I will explain that with the help of another diagram. So this is the structure of the ovary, which we have discussed. This is the structure of the entire gynoecium. Okay, the gynoecium that I have shown, let me just draw it over here. First, we will draw the stigma, then style, and finally the ovary. Okay, the swollen structure, this one. Okay, so this is how we draw it. Over here you can see the entire enlarged type of a structure. So what happens, this is the stigma. This is the stigma. The stigma of a gynoecium, in this particular surface, it is a bit sticky. It's a bit sticky, so that the male gametes, which will form later on, here the pollen grains get attached in this particular sticky substance which is present in the stigma. After that, this particular pollen grain, it will start to germinate. Okay, it will start to germinate as shown in this particular diagram. So when this particular pollen grain starts to germinate, this is termed as the pollen tube, which is already mentioned over here. And then the pollen grain will have, it's actually a cell, so that cell will divide to form two male gametes. Okay, it will form two male gametes and a vegetative cell. So that particular vegetative cell will form this particular pollen tube, and the male gametes, they will be transferred in this pollen tube. And inside the ovary, there will be the ovule present. Inside the ovule, there will be one egg. Okay, and some other cells will be there. There will be this egg, which is known as the female germ cell or female gamete. It is also known as female gamete or egg or female germ cell. Now this two male gametes which were formed, one of those two male gamete will enter like this through the pollen tube, and there will be an opening here in the ovary. Okay, there will be an opening over here, which is this opening is known as micropyle, and this is known as micropyle. So from this particular opening, this pollen tube is going to get into the embryo sac. There will be a sac-like structure inside the ovule. Okay, inside the ovary there are ovules, and inside the ovules there is this female egg or female gamete, and this particular pollen tube will enter through this particular region which is known as micropyle, and it will release its male gamete. One of the male gamete will fuse with this particular egg, and after fusion that process will be termed as fertilization. The process where the male gamete will fuse with the egg, that process is known as fertilization. And after this fertilization, after the fusion of male and female gamete, the formation of embryo takes place. Okay, the formation of embryo takes place. So this is how sexual reproduction in flowering plants occur. Through this diagram, we can clearly understand how fertilization takes place. Okay, reproduction is also termed as fertilization because it involves the fusion of male and female gametes. Okay, and the male gamete will enter through the pollen tube and enter through this region of present in the ovule. This is known as micropyle, and inside the ovule there will be one embryo sac where the female gamete will be present. Okay, and this male gamete will enter through the pollen tube and fuse with the female egg or female gamete, and there will be fertilization occurring when both the gametes they fuse. That process is known as fertilization. So reproduction is actually getting initiated, and they will form the embryo. Okay, and this embryo will give rise to a new plant. So this is how reproduction sexually occurs in plants. So I hope you enjoyed the video and you understood the sexual mode of reproduction in flowering plants. Meet you in the second video. Thank you so much for watching my video.